years ago, I remember buying my Tesla. It was popular then. And I was so excited because it had features that I'd never seen before in a car. And it had this one particular feature that I really liked because I like speed. It had modes. I could choose comfort mode and move slowly, and I could choose sports mode and move a little more briskly. Or I could choose ludicrous and make everyone in my car sick. And it was so exciting. Every time I would hit that ludicrous button with my first time passengers, and I would say, put your head back. But then, of course, Elon always finds a way of upgrading, and he sent me a gift. Ludicrous Plus. And we always know that Plus is better than whatever's in front of it. So Ludicrous was amazing. But Ludicrous Plus was only for the insane. And I was so excited about having Ludicrous Plus and Ludicrous and sports. And I thought, I'm never going to use comfort mode, but it's just good to know it's there when I'm a senior adult, which I actually am, tragically enough. And here I am next week turning 67, and I had this really painful realization. I only drive my Tesla in comfort mode. I cannot remember when I've used Ludicrous Plus, maybe once with someone I hated. I cannot remember the last time I used Ludicrous, except that I had to pull over and everyone ran out of the car and lost their dinner. I can't even remember the last time I used sports mode. For the last 5 years, I've lived in my Tesla in comfort. But it's always nice to know I have options. I drive in comfort, but I know I'm capable of sports. I drive in comfort, but I know that inside of me, when I get inside of my ex, that I can be ludicrous. And if I'm really crazy, if I really want to go wild, I could even Ludicrous Plus my life. But I don't. Somehow I seem to be satisfied with the potential without the practice. If I were going to describe what I want to talk to you for a few moments today, is that there is a mode inside of you that could be described as Ludicrous Plus. But you may have never actualized it. In fact, there's a mode inside of you that could be described as ludicrous, and you may have never activated it. There might even be a sports mode, and you go there on occasion. But I have a sense that most of us live our lives in comfort mode, especially when it comes to our faith. And what can happen is when we actualize our faith only in comfort mode, we think that's what faith looks like. That's the full potential of that faith. And then you get that, you ever that uncomfortable experience where you're living your life in comfort, and then someone comes in and they start living in sports mode. By the way, it's usually people who are brand new to their faith. They're all excited, they think God is awesome, they mention Jesus a lot. They even carry their Bible, and it's strangely often large. And you're like, oh yeah, they're in sports mode. They're new, but it'll wear out. They'll get comfortable, and eventually they'll come down to comfort mode with the rest of us and do life with us normal people. Then every once in a while you get a ludicrous, and you know they're going to start a church. Because there's an aberration to the rule, or they're going to go to prison. One of the two is going to happen, but something significant is going to happen to their life. And yet when you read the scriptures and you hear what Jesus describes about us, it's challenging when you read about Jesus and you think to yourself, did he really do that? It takes a lot of faith to believe what the scriptures tell us about Jesus. But I think it takes more faith to believe what Jesus tells us about us. See, it's one thing to shift and go, I believe that Jesus is God. I believe that he lived this life in that Ludicrous Plus space. Because there's no way that Jesus lived it in comfort or in sport or even in ludicrous. Jesus lived a ludicrous plus life. And that would take a huge, huge step of faith, a leap of faith, to come to that conviction. But I think it's actually harder to believe what Jesus says about you and your potential. What could happen in your life if you connected yourself to him. And so in John 14, beginning in verse 12, I'm going to read verses 12 through 15. Then I'm going to jump ahead to verses 23 and 24. Jesus tells his followers this: "Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing. And they will even do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. If you love me, keep my commandments." Then in verse 23, it says, Jesus replied, "Anyone who loves me will obey my teachings. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teachings. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me." I actually still remember the first time I came across these words. I'd only been a follower of Jesus for a few weeks, reading through the Gospel of John as I had been directed, and I stumbled on this verse, specifically verse 12, where Jesus says, "Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father." And I didn't know a lot of the historical background of the scriptures. I didn't understand a lot about contextualization, but I understood enough to know where I stood in this particular moment. Because I was absolutely convinced now that Jesus had gone to his Father, and I knew that I believed in him, so what was in between had to somehow apply to me. "Whoever believes in me, the works that I do, he shall do, she shall do. And even greater things than these." Now, if you want to use contemporary language, when Jesus talks about greater things, he's talking about ludicrous plus, the GT version of you. But how do you step into that experience where your faith moves out of comfort, moves past sport, and actually moves into what could only be described as ludicrous? A life that cannot be explained or understood. In fact, a life where you won't even know for certain that you actually lived it, because when you remember, you think, did that really happen to me? I remember when I first started writing books, I'd written maybe 4 or 5 books, and there were certain stories in my past that I'd never put in a book. And Kim came to me and said, "There's this one moment in your life that you've never written in a book. Why have you never put it into a book?" And I said, "Because even though I experienced it, I still have a hard time believing it happened to me." I was afraid to document it, to hold myself liable and responsible for what I experienced. And I can tell you, the longer I live my life, the more I realize that I have this default tendency to move into comfort mode, even when I've lived in ludicrous plus. Why in the world would you ever choose anything less when you've experienced more? But this isn't just true with God. It's true in every area of our life. How many of you have not experienced yourself at your highest level, an optimal version of you, and yet you settle for less? How many of you have not chosen, at times in your life, relationships that were beneath what you actually deserved or valued? How many times in our lives have we chosen a day where we just existed rather than lived? The tragedy isn't simply that we live our faith in comfort mode. It's that we live our lives in comfort mode. How many days of your life will you look back on and think to yourself, I just wasted that day? You didn't destroy it. That's the problem. at least on a self-destructive day, you can go, wow, I shouldn't have done that, right? I should not have robbed that bank, right? I shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have jumped out of that window. 3 stories are too high for me. There are days that if you make destructive choices, you can look at those days and go, I should not have done that. But those are not the most dangerous days. The dangerous days are the days where you didn't do anything you shouldn't have done. You just didn't do anything you should have done. It's not the days that you filled with self-destructive choices, but the days that you filled with no choices at all except to live in comfort. Now, I don't know your background or your theological bent, but when Jesus says, the works that I do, you shall do, and even greater things than these you will do. What I do know, whatever your understanding that is it's more. It's more than you're capable without God. It's more than you are capable of without faith. That God is actually inviting us. Jesus is actually telling us that a significant proof of who he is how he changes us and the way we live. So why don't we experience that? Why don't we live in that reality? Why is it that most of our lives are not in this greater things space? Well, I think it's because we misconnect the dots and don't understand what Jesus is inviting us into. When he tells us that we will be expressions of him, we will, in a sense, be the unwrapping of the next chapters of Jesus. He goes on to say, if it wasn't already difficult enough, in verse 13 he says, then I will do whatever you ask in my name. Don't you just hate verses like that and love them at the same time? I mean, we love verses like that because, wouldn't that be awesome? But we hate them because they don't seem to happen the way that they're written. Am I allowed to say that or am I not allowed to say that? I mean, the reason we don't quote these verses a lot of times is because we try them and they don't work. He says, you may ask me for anything in my name and I will do it. I want a giraffe. It doesn't happen. I should have said Porsche, but I just wasn't creative enough in that moment. How many times have you asked God for something and it didn't happen? And so whatever that verse means, we know it doesn't mean what we think it means. But the problem is when we don't know how to actualize, how to activate a verse, we just ignore it. Because there is a truth to this that cannot be ignored. Jesus says, if you ask me for anything in my name, I will do it. So there is a posture in our lives where this statement is absolutely true, but not in comfort mode. Only in ludicrous plus. Oh, then he adds a caveat. If you love me, keep my commands. Why ruin everything, Jesus? Like you're inspiring us, you're motivating us, you're on a roll, then you have to go do that. You got to go Old Testament on us. If you love me, keep my commands. And by the way, in the verses I skipped, it's the same conversation about commands. And in verse 23, if anyone loves me, they will obey my teachings. Now, okay, this is where it can get a little confusing. And he goes on to say, my father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home in them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teachings. Okay, what's going on now? Are we moving into a legalism, Jesus? Now, what he's not saying is that obedience is the path to love. But he is saying obedience is the proof of love. See, I think sometimes we get confused here because whenever Jesus talks about obedience or the scriptures talk about obedience, we kind of recoil a little bit. Oh yeah, there it is. There it is. There's you trying to control my life. Now let me be very clear. Obedience is not proof that you love me. But obedience is proof that you love God. Because there's a dynamic involved here. Now he's not telling us that obedience is how you earn God's love. He's not even telling us that obedience is how you prove God's love. He's telling us that obedience is how you manifest God's love. Because it all begins with intimacy. If we want to live in this greater things space, we have to understand that everything that pertains to God begins with love. Everything begins here. And what he's actually giving us is this formula for intimacy. Because have you ever just been able to lie to yourself about things? You know, I'm going to really handle my finances this year. Right? I'm not going to buy anything I don't need. Have you ever lied to yourself like that? I don't want anything for my birthday. Yeah, you ever lied to other people? By saying things that are actually not evidenced in your actions? It's constantly a part of our language. But what God is actually telling us is the way you can know that his love has been awakened inside of you is that you love the things he loves. If you could just think of obedience as not an obligation on you, forcing you to be or do certain things, but an expression of authentic, genuine love. Kim and I, we love our daughter Mariah. She's incredible. And it's almost as if we got a double up because now she has Juno, who's 4. And Juno, she's kind of like all of our love. She's all of our heart. She takes first place in all of her family. We all know it. And she came over this morning, and Kim made her breakfast, or Mariah brought her breakfast, and it looked awful. And Juno took a bite and decided against it. And she wasn't going to eat. But Juno has this interesting little process where if she sees me eating something, she will eat it. So I had a bagel with cream cheese, and I just said, Juno, would you like some of my bagel? Yes. And she ate half of it, which I did not want to share, but that's not the point. And I thought there's just something so heartwarming about the fact that she loves what I love because she loves me. And that bagel, I'm sure she liked it, but it's really more an expression of the relationship we have. And what God is actually telling us is that one of the ways you can know the genuineness of your love for him is if you love the things God loves. It's kind of weird to go, I love God, but I just like doing evil things. It doesn't connect really when you have that juxtaposition, right? You know, I love God. I just love being violent. I love God. I just love injustice too. There's a disconnect when you say you love God and you love the things that God hates. But when you love God, what happens is that something changes inside of you. It's not a moral obligation. Oh, I love God, so I have to love this too now. Yeah. It's like, oh, I love God, so I got to love all the right things. Right? It's I love God, and something is happening inside of me that is almost like a chemical compound of intimacy with God, where his love is changing what I love. I love God, and now I'm finding myself loving truth, and I love God, and I find myself loving kindness, and I love God, and I find myself loving compassion. I love God, and I find myself loving generosity. I love God. What's going on inside of me? Everything I love is changing because I love God. Which, by the way, is a really good reason for you to actually know what's in the Bible. Because this may surprise you, but Jesus actually loved the scriptures and aligned his life to it. And the psalmist tells us, says, I run in the path of your commands, for you've set my heart free. See, commands are not a prison. They're a path to freedom. Whenever God speaks into your life, he's not trying to limit your life. He's trying to expand it. And so it all begins with intimacy. You will never experience the greater things, the ludicrous plus, if you don't begin here. That's why it begins with Jesus. Because Jesus is God's definitive act of love for us, for you. So I love God, but I'm not sure about the things God says. Once you know God's love, you know God's love is what motivates him towards you. God will never tell you to do anything that violates his principle of love. Begins with intimacy, begins here at the core of your soul. And so Jesus says, if anyone loves me, they will obey my teachings. This isn't how you prove your love for me. This is how love proves itself in you. And then he says, and my Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. When you live a life of love, you become the hospice of God. God dwells in you. And so here's the beautiful thing about it. The end game isn't obedience. The end game is intimacy. The end game is God's presence in your life. But then there's another dynamic in this. Because you can love God and still not live in this greater things mode. You have to not only have intimacy, but there needs to be alignment. When Jesus gives us this promise, you may ask me for anything in my name and I will do it. And he says it again. He says it multiple times over and over again. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. Now that phrase, in my name, has always been a peculiar phrase, and it's been terribly misused at times. In my name, in the name of Jesus, has become almost like abracadabra. Right, you know? In the name of Jesus, abracadabra, shazam. And we think that if we use that phrase, that magic happens. It's not a magical incantation. It is an explanation of posture. When you do something in his name, it means under his authority. When you're doing something in his name, it means you're standing where he would stand, doing what he would do, saying what he would say. So when you ask anything in his name, it means that you're in alignment with him. And it's kind of interesting to me because all of life actually works in layers of alignment. Even when you don't believe in God. There's some of you here, maybe you don't even know if God is real or Jesus is real. I can tell you that your life is miserable or wonderful based on alignment. If your relationships are broken, you're out of alignment and your life is miserable. If your relationships are healthy, you're in relational alignment and you're actually happier. I don't know, how many of you are married? Just kind of raise your hand. Okay, not as many as I expected. Do they know you're not married? And Kim and I have been married almost 42 years. That's kind of amazing, I know. But we haven't always been in alignment. Sometimes she's just been out of alignment and we'd have to work with it. We're not always in alignment with each other. Sometimes we're not in agreement about different things. Sometimes she'll look at me and she goes, that's just your idea, not mine. Okay. I thought it was our idea. She goes, well, I'm clarifying. It's not. When we're out of alignment, there's no joy. I can tell you. There's no joy. But when we're in alignment, there's actually an incredible depth of relationship. And we can make decisions for each other when we're in alignment. And it just works. One of the funniest things for me is that we have this daily curse. We can't escape it. It's like a generational curse, I guess, has been passed down. Every night, Kim says, what do you want to eat for dinner? It's as if there was no foreshadowing. that dinner was going to happen. It's a shocker. It's 6 p.m. And for most people, breakfast and lunch have passed. And dinner is right there, crouching at our door. And she'll say, what do you want to eat for dinner? And I know that's usually her way of saying, what are you going to buy? Or what are you going to order? But sometimes she'll feign it. She'll go, what would you like for me to make? You know, what do you have? And she looks at me with resentment. And it drives me crazy because we have different alignments in terms of taste. Kim has only a few foods she really likes. And I have a lot of foods I like. And this happens, if it's happened once, it's happened probably 1,000,000 times. Honey, what do you want to eat? Just tell me what you want, Erwin. And then I said, well, no, honey, I like a lot of things. You just pick what you want. She goes, no, tonight you're picking. I'm not going to pick. And I said, okay. All right, well, let's have Chinese. I don't want Chinese. Okay, all right, okay. Well, then let's have Indian. You know I don't like Indian. And I said, oh, okay, then you choose. No. You're going to choose. I said, okay, let's have sushi. You know I don't eat raw things. Okay, but you said I choose. And she goes, choose something so we can eat dinner. I said, okay. And about choice number 6 or 7, I'll look at Kim and I'll say, honey. Now, I used to do it the wrong way, but I'm wiser now. I used to say, just pick something. But with love and kindness, I would say, just pick something, honey. But now I say this, honey, tell me what I want to choose. And here's the crazy thing. Whenever I'm not in alignment with her, I never get the right thing. But when I know what she loves and I'm in perfect alignment, I make the right choice every single time. When we talk to God and we ask God for things, whatever you want is the way we understand this. Ask for whatever you will, and I will do it. When we're out of alignment, we ask God for stupid things. And God's like, you don't want that. I mean, there are a lot of you here who are single. And you have asked God for the wrong guy. Oh, wow. Yeah. Some of you have asked God for the wrong girl. See, the guys aren't saying anything. They're like, not me. And if God had said yes to you, you would be living a really painful, tragic life. Some of you were so sure that you knew what God wanted for your life, that you kept telling God what he wanted for your life. Because you took this passage and you said, hey, God, you said that you will do whatever I ask in your name. And you said, ask me for anything. I'm asking you. How many have asked God over and over and over again for the same thing, rather than asking God, God, is this what I should want? Am I in alignment with you? And it works at every layer of life. If you're out of alignment in relationships, your life starts to collapse. If you're out of alignment with your intention, your life begins to collapse. The entire universe has principles of alignment. And when you live in alignment with those principles, your life actually gets better. It's kind of crazy if you think about it. Do you know that you can be physically healthy and not believe in God? You're like, is that possible? I mean, the way we talk sometimes is you have to believe in Jesus to have everything go right for you. No, you can believe in Jesus and be in terrible physical condition. You can believe in Jesus and be so unhealthy that a person who does not believe in Jesus doesn't understand how you make the choices you make, because you're out of alignment. Everything about us has to live in alignment. We have to be physically in alignment. We need to be relationally in alignment. We have to be mentally in alignment. We have to be emotionally in alignment. All of that matters in our life. And yet somehow the thing that's most important, being in alignment with God, is treated as if it's insignificant. Now, what I want in my life is I want to live with such alignment to God that every time I ask God for something, he says yes. I don't like those Christian cliches. Oh, sometimes God says yes. Sometimes he says no. Sometimes he says later. What is wrong with your view of God? Sometimes God says, are you that stupid? Are you out of your mind? When you live out of alignment, you want the wrong things. When you begin to move in alignment with God, you actually begin to experience the power of prayer. When you're in alignment with God, that's why I just want yes. I don't want maybe, I don't want later. I want my life to be in such alignment with God that every time I talk to God, he goes, you're on the right page. You're on target. This is the yes. And in fact, I can tell you there's this moments, I confessed early on, I live a lot in comfort mode. I'm trying to get out of it. I'm a little nauseous in sports, but I'm moving from ludicrous to ludicrous plus. I can tell you, when I'm in ludicrous plus, when I'm in that greater things mode, I'm not just living in intimacy with God. I'm in such alignment with God that I'm not sure if I'm praying or hearing. And it's kind of awesome, actually. We're like, did I pray for that to happen? Or did God tell me that's going to happen? Get there. Because when you're in alignment with God, it feels as if everything is leveraged in your favor. You're just that person in the right place at the right time. You're that person meeting the right relationships. You're that person walking through the right door. You're that person who opportunity seems to magnetically gravitate towards you. I want to be that person. I want to have that gravitational alignment where everything God wants for me and through me comes to me. Because when you're in alignment, you and God are in this intimate conversation, but alignment only comes out of intimacy. Which, by the way, is why obedience becomes so important, because obedience moves you into alignment with God. And then there's this third dynamic to get into this GT mode, this greater things mode. It's not just intimacy and alignment, but it's agency. And I want to take a moment and just develop this word. Because every human being, let's go back to what Jesus said so we can remember this. I tell you the truth. Whoever believes in me, do you believe in him? The works that I do, you shall do. And even greater works than these. Because I'm going to my Father. You're saying, if you believe in me, this is how your life is going to play out. This is the agency that's going to happen. Now, every human being has a level of agency. And the more agency you actually activate in your life, the more powerful your life will be. And your first level of agency are the choices you have. If you don't take ownership for the choices you have, you surrender your agency. So whenever you have that victim mentality, whenever you're like, oh, people did this to me, or life did this to me, or God did this to me, or my parents did this to me, you are diffusing all your agency. You regain your agency when you take personal responsibility for your life. You regain your agency when you understand the power of your choices. You regain your agency when you understand the most spiritual activity you will ever engage in are the choices you make every day. But there's also another level of agency that's available. It's ludicrous plus. It's the part of who you are that cannot be activated outside of a relationship with God. Now, there are aspects of who you are that are God-given, and he gave them to you whether you ever believe in him or not, which is kind of frustrating, isn't it? Wouldn't it be easier if, we were all just born ugly? And then when we gave our lives to Jesus, you suddenly became like attractive. You go, yeah, I met Jesus. Look at me now. And other people go, whoa, Jesus really changed your life. But it's not like that. God doesn't make it fair. He makes it unfair. You can be the worst human being in the world and be gorgeous. I have a friend, I won't say his name, but he'll know who he is. He lives in Mexico City, and he's a very handsome man, I have to say. Very, very well spoken, very successful, yes, ladies, and still single. And we were talking, he's around 40, and he said, it's so hard, dating is so hard. And my friends, they say I'm too picky. And I said, you're not picky at all. You don't care what they're like underneath being gorgeous. He goes, oh. No one's ever said it like that. I said, yeah, you're not picky at all. As long as they look like a supermodel, they can be toxic, controlling. They can be a black hole of human emotions. As long as they're gorgeous, you're okay. So you're actually not picky at all. All you're looking at is the surface. If you want to be really picky, look at what's beneath the surface. He goes, this is so true, but it's hard. He goes, I love beautiful things. And I know it's a hard thing. And it's a challenging thing, isn't it? But there's a dynamic aspect of being human. Some of you are so smart. It's so irritating. You can have a really high IQ and not believe in God. Wouldn't it be better? It just would be better if everyone was dumb and then they met Jesus. Wow. Pi equals 3.14, 17, 19. And you come to Jesus and now you're smart. It would be so much easier. You're like, I don't know if I should give my life to Jesus. I know it's because you're dumb. And but if you give your life to Jesus, you're going to be smart. That's what happens the moment you give your life to Jesus, is that you increase. But here's the thing. You get everything God wanted for you in that genetic code. It's kind of a beautiful thing. He gives you intelligence. He makes you attractive. He makes you amazing. He gives you gifts and abilities. And all of that comes to you whether you believe in God or not. And some of you have the capacity to become millionaires and billionaires without God. I'm not going to pretend that you need Jesus to make your first billion. In fact, he might actually get in your way. Create ethics and things like that. It's like, just small things. And make the billion, then come to Jesus. Right? Because the reality is that you have incredible potential without believing in God. But you do not have incredible potential without God. God placed that potential in you from the beginning. But there is a level of agency that you will never actualize without Jesus in your life. There's an entirely different level of life, of living, of being alive, of being awakened that you cannot step into unless you're reconnected to the God who created you. There's a level of agency that will take you beyond comfort mode, beyond sports mode, beyond ludicrous mode, beyond ludicrous plus mode. This is the agency that only comes when you live in a relationship with Jesus. He says, and these works that I do, you shall do, and even greater works than these, because I go to my Father in heaven. And the only reason this is going to happen is because you believe in me. And that faith in me will elevate you beyond what you ever imagined. 2 weeks ago, I was in Mexico City, and I got a text on Saturday morning. It said, hey, do you want to play padel? Padel's that racket sports. It's sort of like tennis and racquetball and faster than pickleball. And they said, hey, do you want to play padel? And I responded back, no, I didn't bring shoes. And I couldn't believe I said no. I never say no to things like that, but it's been like 1.5 years since I completely separated my elbow playing padel. where I looked to the left and I saw my arm going in 2 different directions, where they carted me off in an ambulance, and it was the most pain I think I've ever experienced in my life. A year and a half of having 4 torn ligaments and rehabbing it, and I had this thought, I don't know if I can do this. And so I said, I didn't bring my shoes. Then I walked like 20 miles around Mexico City, lamenting my choice, thinking I should go buy shoes. And I went and found some shoes. They weren't very good. And I text back and I said, at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I said, hey, I know you guys played this morning, but do you guys want to play again tonight? They said, yes, within like 15 seconds. Yes, we're all in. They rented a place. We showed up and they said, well, change your mind. And I said, it wasn't my shoes I forgot. It was my courage. You can buy a pair of shoes, but you can't pick up courage in the store. I could just feel the fear overwhelming me, remembering the pain that I experienced. And I thought, I am an accident waiting to happen, and I do not need to go to my 3rd or 4th Mexican hospital and then have to call my wife and her say, again? And I just could see the whole scenario playing out. And so when we got there, I was very apprehensive. I said, hey, guys, it's been like a year and a half. I don't know if I can move. And I also tore my hamstring when I dislocated my elbow. And, so I gave all the, the reasons why I was going to be the worst player. And I said, I'll be 4th best. Let's organize it like that. And we started to play. And I do have some agency. And the game came back really fast. And even though they were all 30 years younger than me, they were just no competition. And I realized very, very quickly, God made me like this. And so I started destroying the other team. Well, we do. Me, my partner, who almost didn't hit any balls, and we destroyed, and then we switched teams to give me the other lesser player, and then we beat them again, and everyone who played with me won. And then there was one set we were down 3-0 because I felt bad. And then I said, what's the score? And they said, they're up 3 games to 0. And I looked at my partner and said, it's time. And of course we came back and thrilling comeback. We won. And my partner, by the end, he wasn't letting me hit the ball. He was running in front of me and hitting the ball, and he was playing like crazy. One time he almost pushed me out of the way. And I said, Paul, you're gonna let me play? Because I'm just so excited. And at the end, I said, hey, you know what happened, right? He goes, what? You were the worst player. And you left one of the best players because you didn't believe you could lose. Because when we were on the same team, I could compensate for your mistakes. So you knew we were going to win. He goes, that's so true. I said, see, that's the way I live my life for Jesus. I know I'm the worst player. And I know I make all kinds of mistakes, but I know who I'm playing with. And I'm always going to win in the end. Because there's a level of agency that happens in your relationship with God that will not happen without Him, which is why Jesus came. 2,000 years ago, God stepped into human history, walked among us, took on our humanity, lived a perfect life, died on a cross for us, rose from the dead, is here right now. And He's telling you, you were not designed for comfort mode. You were not designed for an occasional sports mode. You were not even designed for ludicrous. You were designed for ludicrous plus. And if you'll begin with intimacy and move toward alignment and allow me to activate the divine agency inside of you, you will live a life beyond your wildest imagination. But I don't know what you want. Maybe all you really want is comfort mode. And you came to the wrong place. Because Jesus refuses to let you live as a lesser version of you. I'm going to invite you, if you've never crossed the line of faith, if you've never trusted Jesus with your life, to give your life to Jesus now. But I want to make it very clear. This is not an invitation to live in comfort mode. This is an invitation to give God your life in such a way that he awakens the greatest version of you, that he connects you to his divine power and agency. And if you believe in him, the works that he does, you will do. And even greater works than that, because he went to his Father. And when you're in a relationship with him, everything changes. Would you bow your heads with me just for a moment? Just close your eyes. If you're here in this moment and you know you need God, you know that it's Jesus that your soul has been looking for, and you're ready to move into greater things, I want to invite you to pray a simple prayer. Jesus, I give you my life. That simple prayer is the beginning of a relationship with God that will change you forever. So right now, just whisper this prayer to him. Jesus, I give you my life. Jesus, I give you my life. Jesus didn't come so you could survive. He came so you would thrive, so that you would live, so that you would be fully alive. Just tell him right now, Jesus, I give you my life. If this is your prayer, I want to pray for you. If you just whispered that prayer, Jesus, I give you my life, I want you to raise your hand up high right now. I want to be able to see you right now. Just do it quickly, without shame. This is your moment. Move toward intimacy and alignment and agency right now. Just hold it up high. Beautiful, beautiful. Father, I thank you for each person who in this moment has prayed that simple prayer. Jesus, I give you my life. I pray, God, that right now you would let them know that you have heard their prayer, that that prayer is in perfect alignment with your desire for their life. That even as they give you their lives, that you are putting your life in them. That today is the beginning, not just of a new life, but a new them. I pray that you would surround them with your presence, just fill them with your love and let them know that they belong to you. And God, I pray for every one of us in this room, that we would refuse to live in comfort mode, that we will not be satisfied with sports mode, that we will not even accept ludicrous, that God, that every one of us would move toward ludicrous plus and live in the greater things that you promised us we would live in when we put our trust in you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Can we just thank God for all those who've responded to him today? So good.